Hopefully you can see all around me. I am in the middle of mangroves. And you can see pretty easily the topology and hydrology here is very varied. It is a wetland, and therefore we do have water, standing water, and that's really important. These trees are really important in and of themselves as well, and this is an area that's obviously coastal and really globally important. We'll talk a little bit more as we go along. You can see these small pools, and you can see the roots protruding from the ground. There are those air roots as well that the trees need, as this is a very anaerobic setting in the soil. Even though it's very sandy in this particular location, they are waterlogged, and this is one of their adaptations to being able to deal with that. You don't just like put a whole bunch. It's a pretty butterfly if I get it in here. I'm not even sure if I will, but anyway, it is really waterlogged, and you know, if you were to go and water your houseplants like that, that would be pretty poor. So don't do that. I'm pretty bad at that. Anyway, pretty butterflies are here too, but there are lots of other organisms. There's just encountered some mangrove whistlers. Guess what? They live in mangroves. There are lots of crabs, and there's one right there. If I can get him in there, that live in these mangroves as well. Maybe a little too quick for me, but yeah, that's typical. Anyway, lots of crabs. You have mudskippers. There's some more crabs here, so I'll get something. So there are some organisms that are adapted just to this environment, right? And that's important in and of itself. But mangroves do so much more. And although they're not really, one reason that sometimes they have been able to survive is because hard to build in this area. But when people do, they take out the mangroves. They're really not great for construction. They're really not great for material in that way. There are better trees for that. So we tend to undervalue them. But let's talk about some ecosystem services that this area provides coming up. There you go, I got one. All right. But more about ecosystem services, right? So these provide a buffer from storms. They are a nursery for baby little fishies that get out into the coral reefs that often run parallel to areas like this in the tropics, right? Have all those coral reefs, you have mangroves. They go hand in hand. They purify some of the water here as well, with the slow filtration happening as it goes through these roots. So there's quite a bit. This is a detritus-based ecosystem as well. The leaves from these mango trees add nutrients, which are, if you look at the gradient of nutrients from little micro habitat to micro habitat within this bigger habitat, it's very different. There's areas that are very nitrogen poor, very phosphorus poor, and then there are areas with quite a bit of both. But if you overload that, it's so difficult to even figure out what would happen. So culture eutrophication in such an oligotrophic place like this can be a huge problem with unforeseen consequences. Hopefully you can see the little mangrove crab, hairy leg mangrove crab or something like that. By its hole. Heard something. Let's see what we can find. There's some little fish moving around below us. You can see that those are true babies, but there's also, if he comes out again, oh, he's on there, right? See if I can get it there. It's a mudskipper. Those are really cool. So this is a perfect type of habitat, and you can see them walking around in the mud. Perfect kind of habitat for a mudskipper, which is a fish and obviously able to maneuver a bit on land in this habitat with pools there. Maybe you want to get from one pool to another. And if you really want to think about how that correlates with terrestrial evolution back in the old days, like terrestrial evolution is still happening, obviously, but you know, like getting from the water onto the land, you can see why it's an advantage to have that four-limb homology that we all have, those bones that eventually turned into four limbs and were not flippers anymore. You can see some of the mangrove crabs just chilling out here too. Just another look at all these roots, this root system, if you really will. And from the plant standpoint, obviously, they need this for gas exchange. They need the metaphors to be able to survive in such an anaerobic conditions in these wetlands. Also, though, it really does influence the hydrology in the area. It does influence the speed of the river flow, and this is tidal, remember, too. So this probably be brackish water, would be my guess, not pure salt water, although it could be. Just by means of wrap up, I guess, and some comparison to tropical rainforest. This is much different, vegetation-wise, community structure-wise. Even if you just think about it in terms of vegetative structure, and how many layers are there, much fewer. There's much less water. There's water, there's standing water, there's sandy soil as well, which has a lot of porosity, but doesn't retain water very well. And again, that standing water is not as useful to plants, especially since it's salt water. So not as much fresh water available to plants. You wouldn't want to salt your plants either. I mean, think about that. So you have to be really well adapted to an area like this. And it's just not, like I said, it's not as rainy. It's rainy, but it's not as rainy. It is not that rainy today, as you can clearly see. Nice blue sky for once during rainy season. So this coastal forest, this mangrove forest, much different ecologically, even soil-wise, even though both don't really have that many nutrients in the soil, both kind of devoid of nutrients, which can be a huge problem for some organisms. However, there's plenty of diversity, especially in the rainforest. Here, it's more limited. And that has been your talk from Thailand.